I want to open the floor to you to describe your work, what you're doing currently, but I invite you to always go back to the source of what, I mean, you and your husband are an inspiration to many, many people.
Oh, thank you. Well, we actually consider our relationship a living laboratory, and we share what we practice. So I'm very confident when I share something with people that not only does it work for us, but it it's worked for us for 40 years. And it's worked for thousands of singles and couples that we've worked with. And what isn't always clear, because we're so known for our relationship work, is that we both came together in what we now call the somatic therapy. So Gay is one of the world's experts in breath work and has been since the 70s. And I actually, my background is as I've been a board certified dance movement therapist since 1975. So I'm coming up on 50 years of being in the profession of honoring the primacy of movement, honoring that everything starts with movement, and knowing inherently that if there's something going on that we want to explore, that we can never talk anybody out of their state. And that one of the things we say is that the quickest way to change your mind is to change your body. And so all of our work, including our relationship work, where I actually talk about it and teach people about what we call the relationship dance, because there is a relationship cycle that really is a dance, and that occurs all the way through one's relationships, whether it's intimate, romantic, or whether it's with friends or colleagues. And so really what I specialize in is what I call translation. And I think it's so important for us now, for our culture, because we've become so head-centric and we've become so much more two-dimensional rather than 3 and 4 and 5-dimensional. So recovering our dimensionality, what I've seen over the last several years is the big thing that's in the way of that is what I call the fear trance, is that people are encased within this experience of fear, and it has a couple of consequences. One is that it keeps us from actually accessing our creativity, because we locate ourselves in a part of the brain that's the gorilla brain or the reptilian brain. And we're not able to then empathize with others. We see others as the enemy. And that happens at a level of our brain that we can't get to cognitively, but we can get to it. We can mediate, we can shift through the process of movement, because out of movement, everything else can shift. It's the easiest way to change our state so that we become available to having a different experience, and that we're giving more juice to our brains, more variety for our brains to deal with. So I'll just pause there for a moment and see if there's anything there that you or anybody else wants to respond to before we go further.
This is basic evolutionary psychology that we're all dealing with, but we don't know it. And it's happening at every moment.
Yeah.
There
And
are tools.
Excuse me, what was that?
There are tools that you've translated ancient knowledge of the body into tools that we can just use at this moment in time when we're in a crisis moment of fear.
Yes. And what I would say is that as I look around in the world, I'd say that a lot of people are in fear all the time and don't know it. And the other thing that I think is so incredible there are a couple of things about dance that I think are so very important. One is that the action of moving together, and we do that every week in our little town of Ojai. We have a Tuesday night moving together experience where a person gives a whole movement and dance arc with great music. And there's always some time during the evening when everybody's in the beat. everybody is moving together. They're moving all differently and in their own different style, but everybody is connected through the rhythm and through us moving together. I think that's so important in our modern society. It used to be the center of the tribe and the center of society would be that we dance together. And so I love that we're recreating that in our modern society. And
Yes.
I think the other thing is that everything, all of our cognitive processes like trust and commitment and the things that we talk about in relationship, those can be created as a movement process that allows people to have what some people call a somatic experience, or an experiential experience of the concept. And I think that's incredibly valuable for people, so that they can be involved with what I call whole body thinking. Because we generally, when people are walking around, they literally think, this is me. I exist from here, and the rest of me is, head is good, body is bad. And the whole idea of controlling the body rather than listening to our body wisdom and really celebrating what our especially our movement can teach us, and our body wisdom can teach us. So that's really what I've specialized in for several decades now, and what our seminars are about.
And I thought you were just about helping couples get through their difficulties.
Yep, yeah. Well,
But
that's only the beginning. So, and actually, we don't really say that we help couples get through their difficulties. We really explore the treasure chest that relationship is, what we can learn from each other, and as we open to each other and turn toward each other, what we can learn lifelong. And that relationship is one of the great gifts that we have as humans, and how to take advantage of that is really more of our orientation, rather than what's wrong and how do we fix it.
Right. I mean, I've always thought that if a couple really wants to consciously grow, learn the tango, and when they have an issue, tango it out. It's all about how we move through our moments in time.
Yes, it's all about how we move individually, how we express our own creative individuation, and how we move into unity. So unity and individuation, that's the relationship dance. And then what we add to that is both what makes it spicy, but it can also make it difficult at times.
Right. So doing the dances that you do in Ojai as togetherness is one way of expanding relationship, and then you have to come back together, and there are tools that you've created, and now you're moving into a place of helping people know what to do with fear. And
yeah, because in relationship, or in moving into a new aspect of your career, or a new phase of your life, or making new decisions about where you want to be living, any aspect of your life can really be informed by your experience of your whole body and what your whole body wants to do. So let me just give you an example of this that all of you can try on right now. One of my most favorite things that I do right now is I ask people to do what I call bodifying. And I find I never really have to explain that to people. So I want to invite you right now, just where you are in front of your computer, I'd like you to bodify what you're experiencing right now, or what you experienced in getting to the call. So I'd like you to just take a moment and bodify, and I'll do that with you. So anything that you're experiencing that you think about, you can also bodify it. And the moment that you bodify it, you're opening up all aspects of your brain. So when you're just talking about it, you're using a part of your brain that's about the size of a quarter. But when you move, you actually light up all of your brain. And I love how you're continuing to bodify. So let's just all continue to do that. Anytime during our time together, you think, I feel confused or I don't know what we're doing, just go ahead and bodify. You can bodify your confusion. You can bodify that you're feeling sleepy. You can lie down on the floor and put your legs up in the air. So the part of what I'm so interested in is having people experience their aliveness directly, to be enjoying being alive and moving through life. And the processes that I've developed are basically expanding our possibilities and expanding our choices so that we're just not moving through life like an automaton. So the problem with fear, let me just focus in on that because I think it's so central. And the first thing I want to share with you is that I've created videos and am going to be continuing to create videos that share these different processes in a way that is pretty easy to understand, in which you can take and use with others and share with others. And those links are the links that I sent to you that you can share with the group in a follow-up or however you want to do that. But what I've noticed is that when people are caught in fear, they're disconnected. They're disconnected both from themselves and they're disconnected from the possibility of seeing others as friends, seeing others as possible co-creators. So in fear, someone else looks like the other. And that can be your partner, your friend, somebody that you're who's of an opposite political point of view. And so fear disconnects us. And the other thing that's become really, really clear is that you cannot talk anybody out of fear. So if you say, just relax, there's nothing to be scared of, or it'll be all right, or you get a little more firm about it and say, just don't be scared, just buck up. You know, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And none of those things actually work. But what does work in fear, in the experience of fear, is to move first. One of my friends, Mark Metz, whom some of you may know, who runs the Conscious Dancer, he's a colleague and friend of ours. His whole concept of move first, I really love. So if you're stuck, move first. If you want to create something different in your relationship, move first. If you're in fear, move. Because your fear is expressed in some very particular ways. And so if you'd like, I'd like to show you the forms of fear. Most people are not aware that there are 4 kinds of fear. We know, most of us know fight or flight, but hardly anybody knows that there are 4 forms of fear. So I'd like to have you try them on with me. And then I want to show you what I call fear melters, which is the body's way of shifting from fear to here. A very reliable way of shifting from the disconnection of fear into presence and the ability to connect with others. So I'm going to back up now, and I'm going to turn my sound up just a little bit so I make sure that you can hear me when I'm a little ways away. And let me know, Joanna, if you can't hear me. So, and I'm a little dim back here, so let's see if I can get myself a little bit more light. I think I'm going to turn around this way.
You look like a moving book.
That's what I was thinking. I'm going to give myself a little bit more light. Can you see me better over here?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Okay. Let's see. With daylight savings time, it's a little bit darker. Okay, how's that?
I think it's better.
That's good? Okay, super. So the first form of fear is fight. And a lot of people mistake anger for fight. So what I want you to do is to try on what fight feels like. I'd like you to take a boxer stance, and I'd like you to make fists And at the same time, I'd like you to say, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'll come a little closer to it and say it into like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'd like you to just feel how you experience that.
Ooh.
So the fight is so close to anger that most people confuse fear and anger. And one thing to know is that fear sensations run up the front of your body. And anger sensations start between your shoulder blades and run up your back like hackles. So again, the fight is that, that, oh yeah. So that's fight. I think what I'll do is show you the fear melter at the same time, rather than going through the 4 expressions of fear. So let yourself get into fear stance. Even if you're seated, you can because you want to create that. Now, the fear melter is oozing. Imagining that you're seaweed in water or hot fudge melting over ice cream. And especially take the ooze through your shoulders and your back, your jaw. You can let your jaw ooze. And notice that you can't fight while you're oozing. Now, the next second, you might get scared again, but you open up into a whole new state when you're oozing. I like to take oozing into my hips and into my legs as well, because I think a lot of when we're in fight, we can get tight butt and, really clenched up feet. So you can take oozing all the way down through your body. So that's from fight into oozing. And the second one, the flee move, is a really interesting one. So there are a couple of ways to do flee. One is if you have your body sort of squared away, like towards your computer, and you let one shoulder just start to move away. Notice what your experience of presence is if you do that. Your experience of presence if you move your shoulder away. For me, what I notice right away is that I get kind of diffuse. I don't feel quite here, and my breath kind of disappears. You can also let your foot move away as if you're about to walk out the door. That's the classic I'm out of here move, which is actually a fear move. Like in relationships, when people get really annoyed at each other, I'm out of here. That's actually a flee move. Now, another way that you can flee is by letting your head move back. Like being trapped at a party with a person who's got garlic breath from the hummus, and you can't get away. So that's also a flee move. And you can also do something that's really interesting. You can flee up. You can flee up into your thoughts. You can flee up into, why is this happening? And who did this? And whose fault is this? So fleeing is, most of us can't actually run away. Like if there were a tiger and you run away, and then your body can discharge that and you're here again. But we have a lot of situations where we can't actually leave. And so our bodies hold on to the flee. So one of the things I'd like you to notice is how when you're in fear, you're not here. And when you do a fear melter, I'd like you to just do a body scan and an energy scan to see if you experience yourself as being here. Here I am. So fleeing, I'd like you to do I'm a left fleer. So when I have my left shoulder goes back. So my right shoulder will not go back. It's here. It's going, nope, I'm not going anywhere. So see if you're a left fleer or a right fleer, because generally we have a preference. I think I'm leaving. And so here's the fear melter that you can try on. It's what I call it is sumo. And what you do is you get your legs, I'm gonna see, you get your legs wide and you come down into your legs and you feel your feet. And notice when you're doing sumo, especially when you're doing a full-on sumo, you're here. You're not going anywhere. And again, it gives you that shift into here. So the wanting to run out the door is a very common experience that we call flee. And then when we shift into sumo, that experience of, here I am, and I can find my breath again. I can feel my belly loosening, and I can feel my breath and feel me here. So that's flee and sumo. Now, my personal favorite is freeze, and that one's really easy to do. You just tighten everything. Tighten your toes, tighten your butt, tighten your stomach, tighten your shoulders, tighten your fists, open your eyes really wide, and hold your breath. And then let it go. And then do that again. And then let it go. But you can also do, that's a full-on freeze. You know, if you hear a really loud sound, or one of my friends saw an accident happen right in front of her and she went into a full-on freeze. But you can also have just a little startle. You know, something, you know, there's a loud noise. That little startle, that's a little mini freeze. You can also freeze into the middle of you. One of the things that I learned as a child was to kind of just make myself smaller by freezing into the middle of me, because then I could become invisible and I wouldn't get into trouble when my dad got really angry. So you can freeze inward as well as freezing with your muscles. So let yourself freeze, and just to try that on before we do the fear melter. And then what people often say is, just relax, which of course doesn't work, but it can also make you mad. So when you're frozen, what I have found is that I can still wiggle my fingers and toes. So let your body freeze, and then notice you can wiggle your fingers and or your toes, and then you can let that wiggling start to spread, start to move through more of your body until everything is wiggling. And I like to wiggle enough that I can feel it, I can hear it in my voice. I wiggle until I'm getting just a pleasurable wiggle through my whole body. So here's also something about the science of fear, is that when you do fear melters for 2 minutes, it will change your whole state. So when I teach people fear melters, they do a little bit of wiggling and then they say, oh, well, that didn't work. I like to remind them to practice for 2 minutes, because that will then change your whole body physiology to presence. So we have now fight and flee and freeze, but the one that most people don't realize is fear is faint. And faint, my theory right now is that most of the country is in a faint, that they're in the whole culture is in a faint. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if you're standing or seated, imagine that your life energy is just draining out. It's sort of draining out through your feet and puddling. And it's just kind of blah, 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 blah. So that's a faint. Usually these days we don't faint full out, but there's that sense of just like losing your energy all of a sudden. And the other way that you can access faint is by opening your mouth, letting your mouth hang open, and looking around and saying, that moment of confusion is also a faint, where you lose your words or you just sort of kind of go blank for a moment. That's often a faint. And most people don't realize, and faint, I think, is moving you more toward being passive, of just giving up, of resignation. So it's a very powerful fear response when people are feeling more hopeless and feeling disconnected. So the fear melter that I've invented, I call love scoops. And I'd like you to imagine that you have a big pool of luscious love around you. Can be whatever color and depth and texture that you like. And I'd like you to scoop up some love and give it to any part of you that's feeling a little faint or even just wants some contact. So scooping and connecting. And scooping and connecting. And you can do it fast or slow or all around you. And you can also scoop and let it shower over you. I think that the contact is very important. But what we're also doing is reaching out to the world and bringing love in, even if we don't believe it. So if you do this with your body gets the message that even when I'm stuck, I can reach out and connect. So the fear melters, I'm going to come over and sit down again here and move my computer. The fear melters, we've just gone through them, and we have an animation and we have several videos that show you how to do it. So if you forget, there are reminders. And here's the thing that I found. Fear melters move you from fear to here. And then if you do something in that opening, when you're free of fear, it begins to rewire your brain. So I do what I call Fear Melters Plus. And so you can do Fear Melters plus a really open breath. You can do Fear Melters plus a pattern interrupt, where you move your body in some way that's not familiar to you. You can do Fear Melters plus saying something that's true for you. You can do fear melters with something I call essence pace, which is moving at the pace where you're aware of you and you're aware of others. So what you can do over you and working with clients or sharing with friends, you can open your body to enjoy more presence and choice rather than reactivity. So when you're in fear, you're reacting and you can't actually think. You can't dream up new solutions from fear. So generally in fear, we have an escalation of the patterns that worked for you when you first learned how to create your fear signature. When I'm doing a seminar with people in and unlocking the fear code, I have them do an activity which you might want to do in a breakout group. We can decide. And I have people talk about a recent upset. So I have them work in pairs. And a person talks about a recent upset. And the facilitator helps them to exaggerate everything that they're doing. So gestures and posture and tone of voice. And what happens if you do that for just a minute or two, you can begin to see the fear signature. You can begin to see, is this more like fight? Is it more like freeze, more like flee, or more like faint? So my fear signature, which happens really quickly, but I'll slow it down for you. So if I am experiencing a perceived threat, I first freeze, and then I kind of faint. I kind of get confused because I can't really kind of figure out why this is happening to me. And then I fight. But what it might look like from the outside is that I freeze and then I fight. But in the middle of there is this little faint where I get a little confused and then I fight. And because I know that now, I can begin to feel the body signals when I'm in fear. And even if you don't know if you're in fear or not, we found that the fear melters you can use proactively. And we have programs and group practices where people put on music and do 3 minutes of fear melters in the morning before they go into their day. And it's so wonderful for opening up like a blueprint for the day, where you're experiencing yourself present and resourceful and dimensional and able to go into your day. So you don't have to wait to get scared to do fear melters. Because as I look around the world, and I think you might also see that as you're moving through your days, is that most people are in fear most of the time. And I think it's the source of, if you look at any problem that's going on, I think at the base of that is that we're locked in fear. And so we can't find our resourcefulness and our choice. So that's why it's been such a big focus for me over the last few years. And one of the things that I wanted to be sure to share with you, although it's not the only thing, but in order for us to actually take more positive action in our lives, knowing how to move out of fear and move from fear to here and full presence, I think that's valuable. So I'm going to pause here and see if people have questions or experiences you'd like to share.
Do people know how to let us know that they have a question? You can go to participants, click on that. Tom, help me.
You go down to participants, it'll bring up a window on the side. You should see towards the bottom the ability to put up a little blue hand, which Kim
Okay, great.
done.
Kim raised her hand.
And Kim is,
Where is Kim?
there she is.
Yeah.
She is unmuted.
Sorry, I don't have video right now.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Please go ahead.
I do wonder if there is something similar that can be applied for anxiety. For so many people, I know, my children experience it. They're not with me, so it's hard for me to comfort them, and I don't know exactly, other than asking them to meditate and all that.
Which is great, but yeah. So what I'm hearing, Kim, is so on the continuum of fear, anxiety is fear.
Oh.
So we have code words for fear. Like especially in business, like I'm uncomfortable with that. That's actually I'm scared. And so I have found, and friends and colleagues and clients have found that simply practicing the fear melters. So one of my friends was telling me, I live in Southern California, and we've had our second round of really big fires. We had a really big fire that a couple of years ago that surrounded the whole town of Ojai. It was very scary. And so we're on high alert whenever there's a fire that's anywhere in the vicinity. And what she said was that her daily practice of the fear melters gave her such a sense of being home in herself and being able to respond effectively. Like she had her car all packed up, she was all ready to go, she got evacuated, but she wasn't frozen or stuck in her anxiety. She was still enjoying her day, but she felt ready. So I think that fear melters could be really useful for anxiety, anything on the fear continuum.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that explanation.
Oh, sure.
And just as a follow-up, is the exercise you just shared with us available somewhere for the public so I can share them with others?
Yes. In fact, I've sent those links, and And you can also you can write down now, if you go to the website foundationforconsciousliving.com, we have a whole page on that is about fear, and it has the science of fear, where fear comes from, how it activates in our brain. But we also have videos about how to do the fear melters. And then also on my other website, I have Hendricks.com, which has more of our relationship material. And if you go there, you'll find a video where I'm teaching a couple how to do fear melters. And then they have a conversation with each other, incorporating fear melters. So you'll get to see it in action. And if you have any difficulty finding that, you can just contact us. There are contacts on both of our websites, and be happy to make sure that you get that information. I also created an animation a few years ago that you can find on YouTube. And so if you go to YouTube and you just click on Fear Melters animation, it will come up. And it's really cool because everything that I talked about back then is it's happened. So I think it's highly relevant, and it will give you, there's these little icons, and it'll really explain to you what happens to your body when you're in fear, what happens to your relationships, and then it'll show you the fear melters. And we're going to continue to be making not only fear melters videos, but how to do what we call restoring resourcefulness from a body wisdom and a movement point of view. And we've created those videos, and I'm editing them now, and I'm excited to get them up because they're through our foundation, our nonprofit foundation. And I think this is such a central problem for people, is being able to presence themselves in the middle of the chaos that's going on right now. That's my central focus. So thanks, Kim.
I watched
Thank you.
it today, and the simplicity of it made it very accessible. I could watch it in a moment, and just the simplicity helped me understand exactly what was being described.
Oh,
That's
good. I'm so
lovely.
glad to hear that. Super. So I see we have some other hands up too. So if you want to direct that, I'm.
Jackie is now unmuted.
All right. Hi, Jackie. I can see you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Mm.
This is awesome. So I'm curious about in a more relationship based. So I'm very open to everything you're talking about, but my partner tends to be more closed off.
Yep.
So if we're communicating and I'm noticing some of the 4 fears that you explained, would it be bad or good, for me to start doing the melting techniques, or is that not going to be helpful for the other person?
Well, what I do is the same thing that I've done in my whole career when I'm, as a movement therapist. I can see what's going on for the other.
Okay.
And what I do is I'll do what I call matching, kind of a matching mirroring, but I do it in a very subtle way.
Okay.
So, I'm not doing big old, and what I found, and also I invite you to experiment with this, because this is, we're doing a living laboratory here.
Yeah.
If someone is scared, that's influencing me. So we know that fear is contagious, but what I've found is that presence is more contagious.
Okay.
So if I'm doing fear melters and I'm opening my breath, and fear melters could also just be simply moving in an easy way. Because often in fear, and especially if the other person is scared, we get kind of frozen, like, uh-oh, I know something's wrong here. And so our own state gets affected by that.
Yeah.
So doing light fear melters then also is an invitation for others to presence themselves.
Okay. Awesome. Do you think it's important that myself or another in a similar situation talks to my partner about about this prior, or if I don't get a chance to, can I just dig right in and start doing it?
Because see, remember, you can't talk anybody out of being scared, so it wouldn't matter. So if somebody is scared, and it would be just equivalent to saying, don't be scared.
Yeah, okay.
So you cannot, I mean, that's the thing that our brains don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You cannot talk somebody out of fear. But if you've moved from to, it's very inviting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're speaking directly to their bodies. So you're doing body, and their bodies will get it.
Okay. That's lovely. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for asking. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to say that what you started with is I'm very interested in, my partner is not. And I thought you were going to ask, what do I do about that? Because that is the number one question that we get. Basically, we're moving at different paces, or he or she or they are not, they're not interested. And what I found is that it's much better to demonstrate than it is to try and teach.
Okay.
You know, as one of our students a few years ago said, when she would go home to visit her parents, she said if she talked to them about Buddhism, they were totally uninterested. But when she modeled when she practiced Buddhism, then they got it.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to check out your resources too. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I can also imagine the more you do the fear melting techniques, the more subtle they become.
Yes.
They're more effective for you because you've been doing them for a while, but they're just like part of your body repertoire that people see as a dance.
Yes, and my friend that I was mentioning who was in the fires, she realized that her body started doing fear melters before she thought about doing them. That was so lovely to hear, because in her practice, she would just do them for a few minutes every day, but she'd been doing them for about a year, and that her body had integrated those as a choice. And I love that. And I also find, too, what you're saying, Joanna, about I find that the fear melters then weave with each other because they're very effective to use together. So like doing a wiggly sumo or an oozy wiggle or doing wiggle scoops, bringing them together is very effective, because often if you've got a deep fear reaction, it's going to be layered up. It's not going to just be freeze, or it's not going to just be fight, although fight is very popular because it's the one that looks like it's most protective. And, we have that kind of, we threaten people to try and make them go away. It's kind of a guerrilla move. And if they don't move away, then we can get more frozen. So as you practice, I think you'll find that it both becomes more subtle, but that you also enjoy more and more presence, more time being here rather than being scared. And I think that's a great payoff, because in that, I can actually have choice. So when I'm here, I experience much more freedom. When I'm in fear, I have very little choice. And to me, that's one of the really big elements of the practice of fear melters.
It's great.
Great. Do we have anybody else who has their hand up? Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Let's see.
Yeah, it looks like
we have Rose, and she is unmuted.
All right. Hi, Rose.
Hello there. This is a wonderful presentation, and I found myself wanting to write it down because very helpful and intriguing, albeit simple. And then I realized I don't have to, because it is so natural and instinctual. One example would be the freeze and the wiggle. When my husband and I walk in public places, I tend to freeze and pull into the center, especially if there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And as we walk hand in hand, he just gently shakes my hand and I go,
Yes, that's a beautiful example. Yes. Our bodies are naturally drawn to do these. I experimented with the actual melter I wanted to use for quite a long time. And we've also practiced these. People have practiced them. So we know that they work. And because they are so natural for us and simple. So for me, the simplicity was really important. Because if I have to think about it, it's not going to work. So the simple movement then allows me to develop more complex movements and more limbic resonance, more connection. But speaking to my fear brain needs to be very, very simple.
Yes, and to have them named now awakens awareness of them, and that's a good thing.
I think it is a good thing to be able to be curious about, I'm scared. You know, I thought that there's this whole complicated thing going on, but I'm scared. And so the moment I can recognize, I'm scared, I can begin to both befriend myself. This is not about getting rid of fear or making fear wrong. Also, people think if I can figure out what I'm scared of, that's going to solve the problem. But then you just have a list of everything you're scared of. It doesn't make any difference to the actual experience of fear. The actually meeting it and befriending it, that's where the change happens and presence happens.
Yes, and meeting and befriending is made possible by the recognition of where it comes from, and even the realization of what kind of fear, what flavor it is, that helps me find it in my body and in my circumstance. So very good.
Oh, wonderful. I find the same. So I am glad to the bringing your consciousness to meet yourself is really, I think, a holy experience and really worth cultivating.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have some other folks, so I'll let you decide who's going to go next.
Well, next would be iPhone.
iPhone, right. I'm seeing the...
Hello,
and iPhone is unmuted.
Okay. So, hello, iPhone. Do you have something you want to share or ask about?
iPhone, are you with us? Shall we go to...
Yes, let's go to, looks like Sarah.
Sarah.
Sarah is now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
I can.
All right.
I can see you too, or I can see your image actually.
You may have already answered this at some point along the way, so excuse my ignorance. I'm so new to, I've never even heard of conscious dance until this conference. So very, very cool. But so for the things that you were teaching us, do you do them just every day as a normal practice, or only as you're feeling those things come up?
What I want to suggest to you, because it's very clear that when you're in fear, it can take up to 2 minutes to shift your physiology.
Yes, it could be that.
So what I recommend and what I do as part of my morning practice, because I have a moving practice, the creative practice that I do, I include 3 minutes of fear melters. And the easiest way to do that is to pick a song that you really like and do fear melters for 3 minutes. And one of the things I want to share with you is that you don't have to do fear melters standing up. You can do fear melters seated. My favorite actually is to do fear melters lying down with my legs and arms in the air. Like doing wiggling with your arms and legs in the air is purely delicious. So, but mostly, you know, when our gravity muscles are engaged, we can get even more scared and go more into fight. So giving yourself different different pace and different directions and different levels is a way to really let your body integrate these in a multidimensional way. So I do recommend that you add this to your practice and don't wait till you're scared, so that you're actually practicing and integrating this so that it becomes choiceless for you. Okay.
Having fun with the body with these different wiggles.
Yes. Yeah, because we're the process of growing up for so many of us is losing our range of movement. There was a study years and years ago about how we go, I think it was Bertherat who talked about, we start out with 2,000 to 3,000 possible movements, and by the time we get through school, most of us have lopped a zero off of that, and we have our 200 or 300 movements that we do throughout our life, and that's how people know who we are coming down the street, is because we have our movement signature. So anything that we can do to, scientists call it pattern interrupt. What we're really interested in is experiencing our full range of movement. I like to consider myself as an instrument, and I like to play the whole instrument and have access to all of these different states and ways of being, and they're all part of being human.
Awesome. Just one quick follow-up question to that.
Sure.
Do you start by doing the fear that you taught? Like, do you start with fight and then move to it, or you don't have to? You just do
you just start with what's pleasurable to you. Because people have favorites, and they almost always are connected to their fear signature. Like, I especially love wiggling, because at the base of my fear signature is freeze. And I had an experience of how primal that is when about 2.5 years ago, I was riding my electric bike with my husband, Gay. We were coming home, and I stopped at a corner to push the signal for the light to change so we could cross. This is Main Street in Ojai. And as I was taking off on my bike, there was a little dip in the road, and my front wheel turned, and I fell, and my bike fell on me. And as I was going over, I could feel I was freezing, and I could not stop myself from freezing. Even though I started wiggling as I was going over, it was too late. And I broke my hip, by the way.
Oh.
So I snapped my hip, and it gave me the opportunity to learn all about movement all over again. And I may at some point share what I learned. For example, all movement starts in your pelvis, in your hips, all movement. And so I really learned a lot about how moving from fear to presence allows everything else to heal and to become whole again.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Great. iPhone is back again.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes. You want to give that one another shot?
It's fine with me we'll try it once more.
Desiree's unmuted.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Desiree.
Hi. Sorry, it's not easy for me to get video right now. I was just wondering. So in terms of like PTSD,
yes,
and complex PTSD, how do you see that these kinds of things working?
Well, I think that the fear melters can be an integral part of PTSD treatment, and in the program that we're developing that comes out of our combined 100 years of experience between Gay and me, we're putting together the simplest processes that can allow people to find and to do what we call restoring their resourcefulness. So along with fear melters, we focus on presencing and have some processes to allow people to really experience presencing, breathing, whole body listening, and something that we call FACT, which is facing, accepting, choosing, and taking action. And those are all whole body processes. And the combination of those has been very effective in treating people with PTSD. And also, it's designed to be able to use with everybody, with other programs. So it doesn't have to be its own separate. It's designed to enhance any kind of restoring resourcefulness program for, you know, PTSD or people who've experienced. We've used this with people who have gone through the fires here and lost their houses, and you know, some have experienced some really significant trauma. And for the general state of the polarized state of our culture right now, I think almost everybody has some level of PTSD going, but some people have very complex forms of that. And my sense is that fear melters and these other things can be a part of designing experiential programs to assist people to come back home to themselves.
So we just keep our eyes open for the...
Yes, what you can do is the videos are being edited right now, and they'll be up on the Foundation for Conscious Living within the next month, or for sure by December. And so just keep checking back. And also, if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get current information about how to use those.
Just also just want to really thank you for your, it's just lovely and delightful, beautiful work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. I'm enjoying so much liveliness and restoring my own resourcefulness that I wanted to share that with others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is a perfect moment. We're coming to the end of this hour. I want to thank the Conscious Dance Conference, and I want to thank you very, very much. Thank you for all the good work that you're doing. It's very helpful. I know how many couples have been helped by your work, and I know that your fear melters are in my life now. Thank you.
I am so glad. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being interested in conscious dance. That's, you know, that is home base for me. And so any way that I can contribute to what we're all enjoying is a great pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
All right. Mwah.